Saw your levels. We should be good. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Loose Canon. Today is October 24th. We are in the second week, going into the final week, right? Or is it 4 weeks of Festival of the Lost? Is it 3 weeks or 4 weeks?
So this Tuesday is the final week, right?
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, because then it goes until November 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah. All Saints All Saints Day month, right?
November coming fire.
Yeah. Uh, so this week we might have, if you haven't followed us on Twitter, you might not have seen that we decided, instead of just sharing like scary entries that we like, instead we are going to read the new lore book, which is it Tales of the Forgotten? Because it's got like there's like two different things. The lore book is called one, and then the book itself next to Eva is called a separate thing, even though they are the same.
Yeah, so Tales of the Forgotten is what I thought it was.
Well, that's concerning. Uh, Sorry, I just noticed something. It's just in our Google Doc, we actually have two people viewing it, but it should only be you.
Uh-oh.
Are you wolf or hyena?
What?
Anonymous wolf or anonymous hyena?
Are you anonymous camel?
There's a camel. I should be me.
See you? And then
Yeah, because I have my own. Like,
anonymous camel.
either way, hopefully that's not actually concerning, and hopefully it's just a weird Google Doc thing.
Uh,
Uh,
uh.
reload it. Maybe.
We have ghosts in our Google Doc.
Okay. Yeah,
It's the
they just
Headless Ones.
someone just left and came back, and now there's a camel and a bat.
I just hit refresh, and
Yeah,
now I
so did
see a
I. Okay,
camel.
so then we must be camel and bat. You were hyena, and I was. That's confusing because
I don't get it. I don't get it.
I don't like it. Either way, I don't know why it has to be haunted. Um, that really threw me off. I'm sorry. How have you
Weird.
been liking Festival of the Lost? Really quick before we
Pretty
get
good.
into it.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
I really like the activity, the haunted sectors. I think that's a great way to reuse lost sectors, and I kind of hope they do more things like that. Like there's so much of the game that is just untapped and uh untapped, and I would love to see it more focused like that.
I think they could probably expand on it. Maybe they were testing the waters a little bit.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think of the actual names of the locations, but like Europa's a great example where you have that whole north section that was Reese Reborn, right? And you go there for a number of quests, and it's always fun to have to go back there because it's like, oh, I haven't been here in so long and stuff. But like this would be a great reason for us to go back. Like give us an activity in these spaces like haunted sectors, you know?
But if we did more haunted sectors, they could just keep. They just how many lost sectors are there? There's probably like
Yeah.
tons.
Are you cutting out or are you just pausing?
No, I think my mic was having trouble. I think I just got it fixed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because there was like normally there's more chatter. It was like, oh, he's
Yeah,
really just letting me talk.
I'm fiddling with my mic.
Okay.
It's a little bit wonky today. I plugged it in and then it did this weird update, and then for
hmm
some reason it wouldn't do anything.
hmm Yeah.
And now it's
Every episode, I have to check off the input boxes and make sure that everything is correct because it's like Discord and OBS, they like to to reset to default, which makes it so no one's hearing you, no one's hearing me, I'm not hearing you in Discord, things like that.
Yeah. Well, and then on top of that, so you got to deal with more. But on top of that, it's like every time I open one of them, they got an update.
Mm, not as well.
And then Windows had an update, and then everything gets screwed up because of that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't get it.
in any case, though, so for the haunted sectors, we got three lost sectors, and what's really cool about the three lost sectors is that they actually kind of tie in thematically with the lore book that we get. Where so the whole lore book just follows Glint going around talking to people, trying to figure out more about the Headless Ones. And he has some people say it's from Europe, they saw them on Europa, another person says they saw them on the moon, another person says they saw them on Nessus. And those are why we go to these three locations, and specifically these three lost sectors, because of what the lost sector was, like where it's located, or the people who went there had an interaction where they effectively lose their heads. In every one of these cases, they went into this location that is now a lost sector but wasn't then, and
Right.
have this connecting line through them all.
Yeah. So that it's it before we get like into the meat of it, just on the face of it, when you're collecting your papers and you're turning in and you realize there's Europa, Luna, and Nessus, you can't help but wonder immediately, like, what do these three planets have to do with the story arc and narrative
Mm-hmm.
going forward right now? Like, maybe there's some sort of connection. So before you even dive into the lore, you're already kind of thinking, well, these planets have some sort of significance story wise going into Savathun and Witch Queen and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about like Glint, hearing about these, I don't know what to call them, urban myths, folklore.
Mm-hmm.
It's so weird. This game is so weird sometimes because things like this happen where you've got many layers of lore where like Drifter having a conversation at a bar and then somebody else listening to that conversation at that bar are two totally different perspectives of the same story.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those things where it's not two different perspectives of one story. It's like a whole nother folklore that's in game that all the characters are know about or kind
Mm.
of heard about. It's like, oh, did you hear about this, you know, headless one? And
Yeah.
then Glint is like, I heard these stories. I'm gonna go find out what it means or what it's about.
Yeah. And
And,
just try to
and
like
so
piece together the mystery.
yeah, the mystery. Yeah, it's like ghost hunting. It's almost like it's for fun. And Ikora even kind of in the dialogue, the banter, and
Mm-hmm.
she's kind of like, "Oh yeah, go have fun."
Yeah, she encourages it. There,
Yeah,
I know the line you're talking about. When you're in the law sector, Ikora can chime in and be like, "Oh, what's your status?" And Glint's like, "We're hunting headless ones," and she's like, "Okay, have
yeah.
fun."
Almost like it's almost like what a parent would do to a kid outside, playing swords with his friends. And what are you doing out there? Oh, we're knights and we're storming the castle. Okay, have fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like that. It almost
Yeah.
feels like that. Glint as a character, we know in the game, pulled pork, was made fun of a lot and has this kind of like this naivete, um, character persona. Almost is what it's almost what it feels like. And some of the other ghosts mockingly talk, down to him, and he is like oblivious to it. He just
Yeah.
thinks, oh, this is normal. And so like people have this like loving relationship with Glint, almost as if, oh, he's the fun loving, huggable ghost,
Yeah.
and it makes sense because he's almost like the outcast
I mean,
who,
look who his risen is.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's a perfect fit, right?
Yeah.
And so, Crow got upset, and so now there's like a little bit of a separation between the two of them because Crow's kind of dealing with all the information that he had. And so Glint's like, well, I might as well have some fun while you're dealing with that, I guess, is what's going on.
Hmm.
Or that's what it felt like almost. The way they set up the story, it almost felt like Crow's got some stuff to deal with. And while he's dealing with that, Glint's going to go have some fun looking for haunted people. I
All
don't know.
right. Well, so we have a lore card this week.
Yep.
Do you want to get into that?
Sure.
Okay. So I turn off the left screen.
Okay. So this actually was 2 weeks ago, but I thought it was really interesting that they would put this emblem in game. I might be reading way more into it than
Wait, I thought it
it
was
really.
Strange Brew, the emote.
I'm sorry, emote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I said emblem, didn't I? Yeah, so the Strange Brew emote is one of the new emotes that we got,
Hmm.
and it's basically a big cauldron, and you've got like a broomstick, and you're stirring it up, and so it's a pretty cool emote. And then like bubbles explode and fireworks come out of it, and it's called Strange Brew, which is funny for other reasons. But the flavor text, which was really striking, stood out to me. So it's called, or it says, um, if you read it, it says, "Was it blind worm's tongue and adder's sting, or the other way around?" And so I was like, "Wait, I've heard that before. What does that mean?" And so basically, that's a line you hear witches say all the time. So whenever you hear about witches in movies or in books, it's like almost like they're summoning something in they're stirring up their cauldron of witch brew.
Hmm.
It's like the stereotypical witch thing, right?
Yeah.
They're all hovered over a cauldron, they're stirring up and throwing in ingredients, and you don't ever know what the heck they're for, but apparently if you mix them just right, then you can summon whatever you're trying to do for whatever reason. And so anyway, I knew that line and I couldn't tell why. So I looked it up and I found out that this is from Macbeth. And so this put me down a rabbit hole. But the flavor text is the line uttered by three witches of fate in Macbeth by Shakespeare.
Hmm.
So the three witches discuss their ingredients as they stir their boiling cauldron and trick Macbeth early in the play by correctly predicting his ascent to kingship. Um, the three witches hail Macbeth early in the play and predict his ascent to kingship. Upon killing the king and gaining the throne of Scotland, Macbeth hears them ambiguously predict his eventual downfall also. Um, the witches and their filthy trappings and supernatural activities set an ominous tone for the play. So at the beginning of the play, this is what happens. So if you're not familiar with Macbeth, at the very, very beginning of the play, it's basically Macbeth overhearing three witches, and
Hmm.
it just sets the tone for the entire thing. Um, so this quote is one of the most familiar phrases associated with traditional witchcraft, and its origins are rooted within. So the recipe for spellcasting, curse-inducing witchery was thought of making them being possessed with evil powers. However, the witches in Macbeth did not actually possess Macbeth, but instead they tricked him into acting in certain ways. Tricked, right? Savathun,
Hmm.
trickery. Um, the witches of fate correctly predicted he would be king and produced ghosts who made him falsely believe that he will not be killed by anyone. So along the story, the witches produce these ghosts that Macbeth sees and interacts with, and they make him feel like he's um, invincible.
Hmm.
So, according to Shakespeare, these ghosts have been called into our world by the use of the adder's fork and blindworm's sting, lizard leg, and owlet's wing. So that's the line that's uttered.
Okay.
Uh, but so this is what my mind does. So the interconnectedness of it all. I couldn't help but think that this silly emote in game is almost kind of telling us something because I went back in my mind about Macbeth's story in the play and what happened in there. And we're all familiar with Lady Macbeth. We're all familiar with her story arc. And it almost feels like Macbeth gets washed out in the story because we all remember Lady Macbeth felt guilty for basically a murder that um, happened, and then she kind of feels all kinds of ways about certain things.
Hmm.
Um, I gotta go for a second. Hold on, all right?
Okay. So, I guess we will get into the book then. In that case, while he's away. Um, so as I said earlier, this lore book, it follows Glint throughout, and we have three sections of it: Europa, Luna, and Nessus. Each section has 9 entries. Each of the 9 entries don't follow a single path; they actually follow 2 or 3 paths depending on how you look at them. So in the first book, I wrote throughout the Europa section of this book, we get slices of various stories that will all lead to their own conclusions. One story is about Glint reviewing hidden reports about an agent seeing a headless one on Europa. Another follows the scans of audio logs from dead exos that traveled from Mars to Europa to find out about the machine tower they see in their dreams. And so it shouldn't be too elaborate. It should be pretty common knowledge now. Awoken, for the longest time, we've had this concept that they dream about this tower, and some of them walk easily to the tower. Others have to fight their way through the people they know to reach the tower. Specifically, what that tower is, we don't really know, but with Beyond Light and Clovis's logs and information, we learned even he doesn't really know why that happens. It's just something that Awoken, or not Awoken, Exos experience.
Sorry about that. I'm back.
Okay. Did you want to finish your strange brew?
Yeah, dude, my dog was choking on something.
Is he okay?
Yeah, he's fine.
All right.
So
Okay.
naturally, I had to hurry up and try to figure out if he was, okay or not. He was fine.
Yeah, of course. So then
He
we'll
was
go back to the
tearing up a
strange brew,
toy.
and then we'll go back from strange brew. We'll go back to the lore book since I didn't actually get too started in that.
Okay, cool. Where was I? Oh, I was talking about Macbeth. So I don't want
Hmm.
to like go through the whole play, but basically, Lady Macbeth has this false guilt about herself because she sees something happen, and so she thinks the whole entire play. She thinks that like she basically is anxiety driven and worried about something that kind of didn't happen the entire time. But Macbeth, um, the king, he is basically playing into the witches' hands. And so the witches end up being these characters of trickery. So at the beginning, you think, oh, they predicted that he was going to be king, and so these witches know something, like right. They know that all they can see the future,
Hmm.
and so they actually couldn't. They just accurately guessed that he would be king, and so then
Hmm.
Macbeth believed that they had these powers. And so he keeps going back to the witches and he keeps listening, overhearing them, and every time he overhears them, they say something that basically makes him act in certain ways. And it's almost like us, like we're being fed this story, right? And it's
Hmm.
making our characters act in certain ways. And it made me kind of feel like um Sabathoon's trickery, right? How
Yeah.
does she work? What does she make you do? She makes you believe that she has more power than she actually does, and that ends up being her power
Hmm.
because she gets her power from trickery. So in order for her to have power, she's got to in some way trick you into believing certain things. Um, the other thing that stands out is that there's three witches, which kind of
Hmm.
made me think of the three queens and the three fates and all of that stuff that kind of goes together in Destiny. And so Destiny loves to play with Shakespeare. There's tons of references to Shakespeare in the lore.
Yeah.
I don't think that's coincidental. I think that's the writer's purpose. Use that. Uh, I think the writers use a lot of the story arcs from 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 Shakespeare
Hmm.
for a lot of things that happen. And so, anyway, that led me down a rabbit hole that made me kind of think about things, all because of one silly emote called Strange Brew,
I mean,
which straight, yeah,
I think it makes sense that like there's someone who liked the idea of having the strange brew emote kind of be like, oh yeah, because we are just playing into Sabathun's hands.
yeah, absolutely. And so, what a convenient way to put something that's Halloween themed in the game, but also have a line uttered or a flavor text just sitting there, like, we've been playing with you all along. And this has
Yeah,
happened a lot in Destiny. One of the things about dealing with items in Destiny and doing definitions is a lot of times I see items in the game that have flavor text or you know whatever in definitions, and I'm like, wait a minute, is this going to be something later on? And then later on, it actually is.
yeah.
So anyway, this is probably one of them.
All right. Well then, so I didn't actually get into it. I was just kind of talking about the book. But
Okay.
so let's get into it. So the book, you can buy it in any order, but it really just makes the most sense to buy it in order because it doesn't really even follow order on its own.
Yeah, that's what I did just to keep it like clean.
Yeah.
Keep going. I've only got half of them.
I need to focus on getting them this week. I really do. I started getting a decent amount. I think I finished off Europa and I started getting Luna and then I just like gave up and then they nerfed everything on how to get them and I was like, well that's a
Yeah,
bummer and
they made it harder.
yeah, it's a freaking holiday event. It doesn't need to be harder. That
Exactly.
like I get the I guess Wrathborn hunts there was like a way to cheese the lure so you're always having the lure charged and it's this quick 2 minutes in and out. I
I
get
didn't know
that.
that. I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
I get fixing that, but they're also like, oh, expunge only takes you 5 minutes to run because we made an activity that we wanted you to speed run. You can't be getting pages out of that. That's too frequent. That's kind of just like, but why? Like, who
Oh, why? Yeah,
cares?
exactly. If you can do something, just do it. Let
Yeah,
them do
because
it.
it
Let
still
them do
takes
it.
skill to do it. You still have to like have your proper loadout and you know like I was having fun like perfecting that run of like okay I throw the grenade at this guy and I run past all these ones and I kill these two and I turn around and I shoot these box to drop the gate and like all
Yeah.
within 4
Yeah.
minutes
Well, it
5
seems like
minutes.
they got what they wanted because now that seems the quickest way is through astral um,
It's
activity.
from public events and the EDZ.
Oh, oh, great.
Exactly. And it's like they I guess they consciously made the decision to leave public events untouched and it's like, "Oh yeah, that's what it always becomes though." Like we finally had an activity expunge, a new activity that people
Wow.
could be like, "Oh, wow, this is really cool to do expunge." And it's
Well,
like, "No,
I've been
back to
ignoring it, so that's probably a big reason why I've only got half the books. I just play what I want to play. I seem
yeah."
to be getting them okay at a normal pace, but at the
Mhm.
rate I'm going, unless I play every single day and maybe play a little bit more, I'm
Yeah.
not going to have all the pages.
You're not
So
going to get
they
all the
need to do
pages, you're not going
something.
to get all the masks, and it's a bummer to like have to
Yeah,
miss out on things,
yeah.
especially like
Consistently
a holiday event.
before I've played the way I've played, and then just from casually playing every season, it seems like I get whatever I need to get right around the end, and
Mhm.
without even having to like hurry up.
Yeah.
If I just consistently play all the time, but maybe not this time.
Yeah, and I mean I don't I'm not a fan of that personally, but
Me either.
whatever. I'm gonna try to get it done this week because I haven't really missed. I mean, I've passed on a few holiday events, but most holiday events I like get everything done, and that's
Same.
like a thing that I look forward to. But so this one kind of
Hmm.
rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah,
But either way, we did get
I
a
like
pretty
the
interesting
activity.
lore book. Yeah, the activity's great.
Yeah, it's much better than all the other ones.
Yeah. But we
Okay.
also got a lore book, and it's probably the biggest lore book we've ever gotten. But it has just like a
Yeah.
lot of like tiny entries, where they could have consolidated this probably into like a 9-10 page lore book if they just, instead of jumping back and forth in storylines, they just released a single storyline and a single entry, but it would be like a really big entry.
Yeah.
And so, for example, the first entry kind of kicks it all off. It's Europa 1, and Glint goes to, I guess Ikora okayed it, but Glint goes to an administrator of the Hidden and receives a bunch of classified documents about that include enough to determine things about the Headless Ones. And so, just to kind of like jump ahead a bit, the classified documents include a hidden agent who outright claims to have seen a Headless One, and also other hidden agents who had had their heads removed.
Right.
And I believe the K1 crew logs also
Yeah.
came from hidden intelligence, but it wasn't hidden
Yeah.
agents.
So have we ever figured out who the hell the hidden are?
The hidden are Ikora. Well, Ikora controls them, but they're just like this like secret group of spies. Eris Morn
Uh-huh.
used to be a hidden, and it used to be believed that the hidden were exclusively guardians, I believe. But this
But didn't we
entry,
find out like there was a ghost that was a hidden or something?
yeah, yeah, go an individual ghost can be a hidden, but so
Yeah.
can a human, just like a regular ordinary human.
Okay. Okay. So that's something.
And
Oh man.
yeah, so she's got this network of like spies keeping tabs on enemies and stuff like that. And this is crazy to think that they're actually sending humans out on these missions, and we'll get to one of them in this lore book. But yeah, and so you have your hidden network entry, and then it throws that away because now we're talking about some exos. And so
Yeah.
Europa 2 is about it's exos sharing their experience dream about the tower that I was talking about. They saw it, the machine tower buried in ice. And
Yeah.
so Glint is like scanning these exos. At each entry like this is followed or is started by saying the following audio imprint was received by Glint the Ghost during scans of an exo production facility on Europa. Its origins remain a mystery. And so that facility is the Europa Law Sector that we go to. I forget the exact name of it. And
Yeah.
that's why we go to that one. It's a direct tie.
Right.
And so
So that
basically, go on.
so that adds a little bit of flavor to the storyline in um, the what do you call it? The dang it, not the Dark Tower. What is it called? the
The
uh,
tower in
yeah, the
general,
tower. Yeah, yeah, the
they
tower.
call it the machine tower in here.
Yeah, the machine tower. But then
Yeah.
there's like a little bit of flavor for the exos and
Yeah, the
how.
exo tower.
Yeah.
The
Well, then
machine tower.
before in D1, we didn't know what any of that was, and the
Yeah.
whole vision of approaching a tower and seeing your family and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
We've later learned that that has to do with how your mind is taking over its new mechanical body, and so it
Hmm.
has to be fed these memories in a certain way to keep you from rejecting your new body.
Yeah.
And so if you don't know that, it doesn't matter. You're just going to read this and kind of go, oh, well, this happened. But if you knew a little bit more about it, like we do as lore nuts, um, it kind of gives a little bit more flavor to that because that was like ominous text back in the day. We didn't know why we were, you know, having these visions of a tower nobody could find and all
Hmm.
that stuff. So just that.
Yeah. And then we go on to Europa 3, where Glint is talking to the Cryptarch Matsuo, who is trying to convince Glint that the Headless Ones don't actually exist, despite many cultures of pre Golden Age Earth actually having stories about headless beings. And
Uh-huh.
so this is kind of just like that third tangent that doesn't really go
Exactly.
anywhere, and
Yeah.
it's not directly connected to anything. It's just Glint doing his research
Uh-huh.
on folklore, and
Yeah, sounds like me in
yeah,
my madness. It's almost like for people like me, here's a way for us to kind of know we to say we know you exist, and we're going to kind of poke fun at you a little bit.
Hmm. And so those are kind of like three different paths that are being taken here. And then Europa 4 brings you back to the first one, which is the hidden report from a hidden agent who has been redacted. And I think it's a guardian, but maybe it's not a guardian now that actually I thought it was a guardian. Maybe it's not, since we know that hidden aren't necessarily guardians. But basically, they're on Europa, and they had a sighting. And they say, this time I managed to get a good look at the creature with my rangefinder. The body was unmistakably that of a hive knight, while the helmet or head, in parentheses, appeared to be that of a pumpkin. The pumpkin appeared to have a face carved into it, three eyes, and a big smiling mouth with flames shooting out.
Yeah.
Bright purple flames. And so he submitted himself for a full psychological battery, and after that, because even he was just kind of like, that's crazy.
There's no way. Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like I'm not going to believe what I'm even thinking.
Yeah.
It's
So we have the hidden agent, and then we go back to the exos, and it's another audio imprint recovered by Glint during scans of the exo facility. And so the audio basically talks about how the exos started out on Mars, and they made their way to Europa because that's what they felt right. And they say the visions became more intense the closer we got. Mortimus 3 thinks it's a warning from the war mind or an assignment, a secret mission, something only we could achieve. And so they think that there's a physical tower on Europa,
yeah,
and there won't be because there never was one. It was
right.
just something.
It was always the whatever in the mind.
Yeah,
Isn't that wild though? Like,
that they
so
all
it
have it.
kind yeah, so like like story wise, we all know about certain things in the lore, and
Uh huh.
all of our guardians and all the characters, NPCs, all of these guys have shared knowledge about a lot of these things, and it's really hard for a lot of them to know, like, what does that specifically mean? Well, to some characters it means this, and to other characters it means this, but what it
Hmm.
actually means as we go on and learn is, DER or exomine, all that stuff. So it's like it
Degenerative exomind rejection.
yeah, exactly. So it's like I don't know. It just seems funny that like everybody's aware of these things, and then
Hmm.
until we discover the new piece of so it's almost like the whole. It's cool because this little thing kind of shows you how the world is evolving with the knowledge that we've gained over the years playing and defeating enemies and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny though that they bring up the whole headless horseman and Glint trying to find out research over it, and then it almost like a little bit comes back to me in my mind when he's talking about a knight specifically having the head of a pumpkin, because that's from the legend of Sleepy Hollow or whatever that was book called.
Hmm.
Do you remember? And then so like there was a knight, the Green Knight, that lost his head and then became like the headless horseman of the whole
Yeah.
entire story. Yeah. So I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, I mean, like you said in the third entry, there's a lot of folklore that has headless activities happen, and he thinks that that's drawing a conclusion that the headless ones are real,
Yeah. Yeah.
despite being hive bodied. He's like, humans can somehow become hive.
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of brings us to entry 6, which is another one of just like Glint talking about folklore. This time with Saint 14 and Geppetto. And Saint 14 is just not having it because he's like, how would they chop off their own heads? And like Glint's just like, I don't know, maybe a guillotine. And Saint 14 is just like, no. Like that's not they're like really trying to
Yeah.
talk Glint out of pursuing this further because they just think
Yeah.
it's so like ridiculous.
Oh my god, hold on a second. Pause. I'm sorry. I have to do this. You said I just it just now dawned on me. Saint 14's ghost is named Geppetto.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the Pinocchio thing, right?
Geppetto was Pinocchio's father, yeah.
Uh-huh. And so Pinocchio wanted to become a real boy.
Okay.
And so Saint 14 is an exo. So
Yes.
Saint 14 is an exo. Pinocchio originally was a wooden puppet,
Okay.
and then he became a real boy through all of his good acts.
Uh-huh.
But it's almost like Geppetto and Pinocchio, Geppetto and Saint 14. It's almost like because Ghost resurrected Saint 14.
I just
He's doing
I see what you're trying to say here. I just don't agree with it.
okay. Well, I just think it's funny. I don't think it's like necessarily meaning the story's going to evolve that way, but it just now
Saint
dawned on me.
Saint 14 is going to become a human again.
I don't know about that. I'm just saying, like, he's a puppet.
Saint 14's friends are going to become donkeys
Oh my goodness.
and then
Yes.
go be in the Shrek movie.
I don't think any of the story. I just think it's there. It's funny because, like, you know, oh my God. What was the song? I once had strings to hold me down.
I don't know
Anyway,
the song. Let's not
okay. All
get
right.
taken down by
So,
Disney.
yeah, sorry.
But yeah, Saint 14 he says people say many things. You should hear what the Elixni say about me. He looked at the floor and scuffed his feet. Not everything you hear is true. And you know, so he's just like very discouraging about it being real.
Yeah.
And then we get into Europa 7, which is another hidden report. And basically, the hidden agent who claimed to have seen a headless one has been removed. He's being pulled from duty. He's being extracted from Europa, and he's being advised just to play it off as exhaustion or an optical illusion. And
Yeah.
just to
I thought
pretend
that
you
was
did not
weird.
see what you said you saw.
Yeah. Huh.
And so, like I said, these read quick. So I'm sorry if it seems like we're going through these really fast. It's just like they are just like a paragraph, and there's
Yeah.
not much to
Literally.
take apart from them. But then we get the conclusion of the EXO entry, which this one's actually like they really like to like have body horror in Destiny lore now. I don't know who's writing these entries, but they are really loving it. So I'm just gonna read this entry
Well, what's a
of
Halloween? What's a Halloween thing without at least a little bit of gore, right?
yeah, I mean, I guess, but it's like they keep going back to this.
Yeah,
But
I
so
got you.
Mortimus 3 looked so content, lying on the conveyor belt. He was getting the best sleep of his life. I envied him. Once the conveyor belt started, the maker's spindly pneumatic arms came to life. They descended on Mortimus, darting in and out of his joints, dismantling him piece by piece. It started with his hands and feet and worked its way inward, unmaking him from a whole into a million tiny components. There was a moment after all his limbs and torso had been stripped away, and he was just a head with a long jumble of neural connectors
Uh,
streaming out of his neck like a
uh,
robotic jellyfish. When his eyes opened, he looked at me, mouth gaping, like he was trying to tell me something, and then his eyes went dark. It's my turn next.
oh man, so that's a direct tie-in to the lore we got about Clovis Bray being above the life support collar on my neck. I was
Yeah.
completely intact. Below that meridian, I had been separated into distinct braids of tangled flesh. My nerves made up one braid, and my circuitry system another. My lymph nodes, my muscle, my naked bones, the glistening holes of my extracurricular matrix abandoned on the table like leftover turkey after Thanksgiving. I mean, that's just like my head was the source of a gory river delta.
Yeah.
So that's like more exos were just destroyed and pulled from their
Yeah,
Ugh.
except when it happened to Clovis, he was still a human. At least now
Yeah,
it's a robot, but it's still like disturbing to think about being like pulled apart. Like I don't
yeah,
even know. That's
yeah,
messed up.
yeah. Gross.
And yeah, and then whoever this other EXO was, it was their turn next. They saw it happen and they were all for it.
I wonder if
And
Guy wrote that or
do you want to
Desmondia.
ask him? Does this
Should.
seem his style?
No, not really, but he did have a lot to do with the Europa stuff on
Well, I
Wooden
thought he
Planet.
was more of a lead. Like he doesn't actually write entries anymore. I thought he was
Yeah.
like
No, yeah, you're right. You're right. Well, maybe he was like, here, y'all got to do something with this. I don't know.
it was like if there's not at least one disturbing entry.
Because I know John, like John, that sounds like
Nightmares, god
something
damn it.
John would do. That sounds like something John would write, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Yeah,
know he didn't write that specific stuff in Europa, so it made me
that
think.
was Seth, wasn't it? The book. So
Well,
your
Seth did the Achilles, and then Desmonia and Guy wrote a big chunk of all that stuff.
I mean the Clovis Braylog, just because of how similar the EXO and Clovis experiences were.
Yeah,
I'd imagine
yeah.
they were written by the same person.
Somebody. It wasn't John. I know that for
Yeah.
a fact, but somebody over there.
And then to finish off the Europa section, Glint actually meets with the hidden agent, and the hidden agent is not accepting that it was a hallucination or that he was exhausted. I saw what I saw, damn it, he shouts, saying it was a headless one. But despite being a headless one, it had a big smiling pumpkin for a head with three eyes and purple flame shooting out of it.
Yeah, I
And
have that
so,
mask. I like
hmm?
it. I was just saying the mask we have in
Yeah,
the yeah.
like we actually have that mask. Because that mask not understood? Like there are jackalites all over the tower. We've had it for years. Why
Right.
is it not like more? It's not canon, and that's something that like festivals and things like they drive me nuts
Yeah.
because like I get into arguments with people. They're like, obviously it's canon. It's right here, and I'm like, but it might not be. It
Right.
might just be for the fun of us playing the game, and because it's so unimportant, and now we're seeing it, and it's like, so it was never canon, because it's kind of. I was gonna. It's been long enough. You should have seen Midnight Mass. It's kind of like the people in Midnight Mass not knowing what a goddamn vampire is, and it's like
Uh,
vampires don't exist in their world. So it's okay that
right.
they're
Well,
like.
okay. So back up, but in D1 we learned that history and everything that happened before the collapse question mark because I don't know the timeline very well
Mhm.
about that, but um, had been argued about because cryptarchs that were finding information about what happened historically and they were using to make archives. A lot of the stuff that many cryptarchs were finding were fragments of prehistory
Mhm.
that didn't exactly add up correctly, and some of the
Yeah.
stuff seemed like it was being rewritten.
Yeah.
So
And
even the
that's
information that they found may have been corrupt about what happened before they exist today. So a lot of the stuff like they don't know about, like it makes sense why they don't know what a pineapple is, or it
yeah.
makes sense like certain things.
Yeah. And I'm on board with that. And I'm not talking about jack-o'-lanterns. I'm talking about jack-o'-lights, which were a thing all the way since back in, I think the Taken King was the first time we got a jack-o'-light.
Jack Light, yeah,
And so this whole time they were being made by Eva and they were all around and all this and all that, but they were never real. They were never actually a canon concept in Destiny. And I get what you're saying with the cryptarchs, because we actually just passed over this one line from Europa 3 where the cryptarch says, for instance, he continued, the Yetis of Himalayan folklore and the lumbering jacks of North American legend,
yeah, yeah,
speaking about Bigfoot, calling him a
yeah.
lumbering jack.
Lumbering Jack, yeah. So it's funny because like there's like a duality or like a joke in that because of like a lumberjack, right? And
Oh,
then
I'm sorry,
yeah,
and I actually didn't notice this the first time I read it. Or the centaur of Greek mythology and the sheepdog of Northern Europe.
Northern Europe, yeah. Uh, and they want you to look up all kinds of cryptids, to
Yeah.
find out what the hell are they talking
What
about.
is a
It's like,
sheepdog?
yeah, what the heck is a Yeti of Himalayan folklore? So, like all these big animals and creatures of folklore that basically they all have like a little bit of a common thread with one another. Some of the stories blend and bleed because people tell stories and then they move to another region and they retell the story and then somebody tells it different and then like the entire world is full of all these folklore mythologies and now because of we live in digital age, everybody's decided, oh, I'm going to make a movie out of this and
Mm-hmm.
totally make it different. I'm going to make my vampires be able to walk during the day and just glitter in the sunlight. It's like, what, right? So we're rewriting a lot of the folklore and mythologies today too. So it's just funny because if you go back to the root origin of a lot of this stuff, it, it's amazing how much gets around even though people live nowhere near each other
Mm-hmm.
back in the old ancient times.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my
I
soapbox.
mean, everyone knows that Desmond Tiny created vampires. Like, we don't need to play
Do they
games.
though? Do they?
They should. That should be mandatory reading. Uh, but so then we get on to the Luna section. And Luna, like Europa, has its own little selection of stories that just kind of weave in and out of each other. The Luna section of this book follows Glint as he tries to uncover the origin of pumpkin headed creatures that the hidden
Hmm.
agent spoke of, as well as following another spin of the K1 crew who went mad on Luna during the Golden Age. So that's something that we've been getting like more and more and more and more of ever since
Yeah,
Shadowkeep. So that's
yeah.
pretty cool.
This was a good one because we got that lore in the collector's edition about the K1 team and the anomaly and all that
Hmm.
stuff, and that was really eye opening. And
Yeah.
to know that a lot of those astronauts
As they
they
were
went
called here, they were just miners. They weren't even
yeah
anything
mine
fancy.
yeah astro miners.
Yeah.
uh, we get to learn that they basically went nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's what we learned. We learned that they went nuts in Shadowkeep, in the Shadowkeep Collector's Edition. But it was just kind of like, oh yeah, like they started having sleep paralysis and they started going
Hmm.
crazy and they started having like what's it called? Psychoses and etc. But
Yeah,
there's so much room for Bungie to play with, and they keep going back to it to like show another side of it where it's like, yeah, generally they just went crazy, but it's like this person experienced this slice and this person experienced this slice and this
yeah.
person experienced this slice and so on.
There's a
But
lot of meat on that bone.
yeah. And so the first century, Glint goes to the moon, and because Eris has seen a lot, Eris has done a lot, been around a lot, seen a lot, and she has never seen a pumpkin-headed creature with flames shooting out of its face.
How's that even possible? She sees everything.
Yeah.
She's even got an extra eye to see everything.
Yep. And that doesn't discourage Glint. He goes on. He goes on to find more. But before that, you get what I believe would be given to Glint from the hidden notes, from the private notes of Dr. Wade Bow of the K1 dig site 4, dates unknown. That bothers me. Date unknown? Are you kidding me? Like, the date would be there. They just don't want to give
Mm.
us the date. It's like, oh,
No, they
this
don't.
tiny
Because
corner
then
was ripped
somebody will
off.
make a timeline, and then yeah, it'll screw up something.
Yeah. And I get it. They have to do that so that we don't create a timeline and then be like,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
wrong.
exactly.
Because we will do that. But either way. And so the first entry here kind of just like echoes what the Shadowkeep Collector's Edition said, where they're having sleep paralysis. They're kind of seeing, and if you don't know, when you have sleep paralysis, you're like wide awake, your brain is active, and your body's asleep. So you're wide awake, but you can't move, and it's very common to see a shadowy figure standing somewhere in the room for some
Yeah.
terrifying reason. Like that's a
Yeah.
real world thing. It's not a Destiny
So
thing.
this actually happened to me in my youth. This
Really?
very thing. Yeah, I had sleep paralysis several times, and
Yeah.
it was always the same scenario where
Did you ever see, cuz I've had sleep paralysis, but I've never seen the shadowy figure.
I did one time see a shadowy figure. It was in the corner of my room at the foot of my bed, off in the distance, and I couldn't do anything about it. All I was because my brain was active and awake, but my
Yeah.
body was very much asleep. The worst one that I ever had was I had a vivid dream about running through an old neighborhood and having some weird interactions, and like the
Mhm.
dream's not even important, but the entire time I was in the dream, my body was above me in the sky, and everything around me, like the sky and the hemisphere of Earth that was over me, was basically my body, and I was trapped down inside. And then there was this moment where I kept coming in and out of the dream, being aware of being in my body, not being able to move, not even a finger. And
Mhm.
it's like the most it's a horrible feeling. It's like a
Yeah.
panicky, like I cannot do anything moving. Like I was anxiety driven, like just destroyed inside my brain, just
Mhm.
trying to move something. Like I was screaming at myself, move something, and
Mhm.
nothing was happening.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Because that's what sucks. It's your brain is awake and you're trapped inside your body, and
uh-huh,
you can't. You're like fully aware that you're trapped. You just can't do anything, and it's like you try
yeah.
to like shake yourself awake, but you can't even do that.
There's a really good Alfred Hitchcock episode. Maybe it's Twilight Zone. I think it's Alfred Hitchcock. Anyway, there's a really good Alfred Hitchcock. I'm going to go with that episode. And I don't remember the name of it, but it's an old black and white episode where this man gets in a car crash and
Hmm.
he's paralyzed, but he's like very much alive and awake. And they have to take him. They think he's dead, and he's not. And he's screaming inside his body, like I'm alive still. I'm alive, people. I'm alive. And the entire time, like they take him to the hospital and they check his vitals, and they're like, he's dead, he's gone. He's screaming inside, I'm alive and I'm alive, and he's trying to move his body. And at the very last second before they go to take him to, the morgue or whatever, I'm not exactly sure this is what happened. I just maybe remembering the episode wrong, but he starts to move his pinky,
Hmm.
and it's like already too late.
I've read a horror short story like that where the guy was like bit by a snake or something, and it's like perfect paralysis, like can't move the body,
Oh,
slows down the
yeah,
heartbeat, all that stuff. So they think he's dead, and he's
dead.
like lying on the autopsy table, and the people who are supposed to be
That
performing an autopsy are not
yeah.
efficient at their job at all, which is a good thing because that's how he survived. They were just bullshitting for like 30 minutes, and then like he was
That's a good
finally
one.
able to like move his hand.
Do you know that what you just said? That's actually a trope that goes way back to mythology too, and they've
Mm.
retold that story thousands of
Oh
times
yeah,
in
I
all
bet
kinds of movies.
that's not an original idea.
No, no, no. Like the story of Orpheus. That's a part of that one, and then the story of even the Disney, or was it Disney, or maybe it was somebody else. The one with the Day of the Dead, and the boy was thought to be dead, but he was actually just bit by a snake, and he was like walking the realm of the dead, and he came back, and then anyway.
No, I don't know that one.
Oh, okay. God, what was the name of that? That was a really good movie. It's a kids movie, but it's not like it doesn't go into that.
Yeah. Well,
Uh, anyway, sorry,
yeah.
derailed again.
And so that brings us to Luna 3, where Glint goes back to the reef, and he's talking to one of the Techians that we saved, Yulaya.
Yeah, how
And
convenient.
I mean, it's good timing, right? Like
Right.
they have a lot of time on their hands while they're waiting for the celestial bodies to align to rid Savathun of her worm. So he goes to her, and she was meditating, and he watched her for 143 minutes until she realized that he was there, and basically just asked him, or he asked her if she knew anything about pumpkin-headed monsters called the Headless Ones. And Elia said, I think I might know something about the ones you seek, but to be certain, you must first tell me what's a pumpkin. Which that's even more understandable because, she's a reef-born awoken. They don't have pumpkins. They're
Yeah.
not going to know what a pumpkin is.
Bro, look around the tower. They're everywhere.
She's a reef-born awoken.
Yeah, no, but you know what? Reef-born awoken aren't that removed from information.
They're removed from the tower customs.
I guess. Maybe. So okay, so so they've never heard of a pumpkin before.
I guess not. Well, I mean, yes and no, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that
Okay.
because there's more conversations with Elia. Before we get to that conversation with Elia, though, Glint is trying to find out what is the significance of pumpkins. Why do the Headless Ones have pumpkin heads? And so, who better to ask but a cryptarch who, of course, knows everything about
But
human
nothing.
history?
Yeah, no. The cryptarchs are hilarious.
Yeah, Bungie's really having fun with cryptarchs lately as well. That's a
Yeah.
new thing that they've been doing. And so he speaks of that time of the year was thought to be a liminal phase, talking about like October and stuff, when
Yeah.
living could communicate with the dead. The cryptarch finally located the tome that he'd been searching for. He put on a pair of white cotton gloves and unsealed the container. And so this is the cryptarch's like history book, right? So
Yeah.
just keep that in
Yeah.
mind.
I want that. Need that. Let me have it. Let me
This is
access the cryptarch's history book, please.
you do that after the show.
Okay.
This is one of the few remaining source documents on the subject. It was published specifically for gentlemen, an esteemed social class at the time. He began gently leafing through the volume. Here it is, he said, pointing to a chapter entitled Pumpkin Body Paint is the Hot New Holiday Trend. It featured depictions of unclothed humans with orange ribbed gourds
Ribbed
painted
boards.
on their
Yeah.
most globular anatomy. So it's an adult magazine.
Uh, yeah, pretty much.
He's just destroying Glint's innocence.
He is.
Just in, in
But
in
but but
public.
but
Just like,
the
check this
best
out.
but the best part of this entry is you now have a window into the the archive of knowledge the cryptarchs are accessing.
Yeah. As you can see, pumpkins featured heavily in the iconography of the time. People would paint them all over their bodies, even in highly inconvenient locations.
What would that be?
We're not we're not that's that's not this class.
Just in the back of the neck.
and and then Glint being as pure as he is. And this helped them communicate with the dead? And the cryptarch says, that part remains unclear.
Yeah. So to back up, even though this is hilarious and kind of naughty at the same time, I am glad that they finally are bringing the association with the Calavera and the Dia de Muertos and the idea of the Festival of the Lost being rooted in the same traditions of the Mexican Latin holiday.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's much more than just
it
that
is.
because
It is. It
it's the
encompasses all
culmination.
of the. It encompasses all of the, you know, practices of many cultures in this one event. But however, going all the way back to D1, they never explicitly tied it to anything. And so
Hmm.
what they did this year is they brought about some direct tie-ins, and
Yeah.
one of them was this, and I love it.
Speaking specifically, the idea that in October in these months it's easier to communicate with the dead,
Yeah.
and of course the ghosts they put out.
Yep. Calavera.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yep. Perfect.
So that hilarious entry aside, we we continue into Luna 5, and we should probably start moving a little faster. Actually,
Yeah, we'll get it.
we
This
continue
one's
into
short.
Luna 5, which is another Dr. Wade Bow, who was the K1 dig site doctor. Uh, kind of still just saying what's been said before about the K1's insanity crisis, where people aren't sleeping, people aren't hallucinating. The This time though, they talk about realizing why the shadow is familiar, and so the shadow is a version of Dr. Wade Bow, and
Yeah.
for whatever reason, it doesn't have a head.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I mean, we will get a final answer to that. There is one more Wade Bow entry that we'll get to, and that one is probably like one of the more subtle horror bits, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
And so now we go back to the reef, Glint and Yolaya. That way, when this is Glint speaking, that way when they lit the candle, it would light up the face carved into the pumpkin. There was a long pause as Eulalia studied the hologram Lint had projected for her. And this was common during the Golden Age, the Techian asked. It was, Glint nodded. Humans used to put the pumpkin head all over the place. They would even paint them on there. But why? Eulalia interrupted.
Come on.
So close to making the reef be
Oh,
like, we hate Earth.
yeah.
All these idiots.
That's good
But
stuff.
So then he said, "Oh, they thought it would help them speak with the dead, as you were saying before, with the more
Yeah.
Day of the Dead rituals." And so Eulalia is trying to understand the significance of pumpkins, to understand the how it helps the headless ones be the headless ones.
Yeah.
Entry 7 is Glint talking to Ikora about the Headless Ones, and
This is a good one.
yeah, this is a cute one because Ikora is basically reminiscing about Cade. Cade used to tell stories about the Headless Ones, Ikora recounted with a wry smile. He said he'd killed dozens of them on the moon. The way he told it, they exploded like pinatas. She raised her eyebrows. Of course, it only ever happened when he was alone. The rest of us never
Uh-huh.
found anything but hive. Which,
So that's a quick little Easter egg to exploding heads in Halo. When you would shoot the enemy, there was a cool
mhm,
little hack you could do to the game, or a thing you could unlock. When you would get headshots, it was called pinata, and then their heads would explode, and a bunch of confetti would come out.
that's
And then we got
also
it in Destiny with, yeah, the wall hack at
mhm,
um,
in the
the
last
raid.
Wish raid,
Yes, there you go.
where you can put in an entry and then any headshot, the confetti goes and you hear streamer noises and it crashes your game and it's super fun.
Just your
It's too
game.
many
It did. It,
particles.
it did it. Yeah. It's funny that they make Cade part of that though, because then it's like, was he hallucinating for real, or is he, something else?
No, I
Anyway,
mean, I think he actually fought Headless Ones, and it's like one of those stories where Cade is like, "Okay, Cade, sure you did," and he's like, "No, but actually this time I did." And they
yeah,
do. When you kill a Headless One, they do explode like pinatas. They
they
drop a
do.
whole bunch of candy.
Candy.
Like
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Cade's probably like, "Then where did I get this candy?" And they're like, "The store, Cade. We're not stupid."
Oh,
Yeah.
good stuff.
And she ended it by saying, "Just promise me one thing. If you do find something, tell me. Tell everyone." Cade would have liked that.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice remembrance.
And
And
then
and
gone.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to continue on.
Yeah, I was just saying it's a good way to remember Cade,
Yeah.
during the holiday of remembering dead people. So
Hmm. And that brings us to Luna 8, which is the final entry of the K1 dig site. And so this is a short one. I'll just read it. The hallucinations have become persistent. My headless friend now appears during daytime. I see him out of the corner of my eye, but when I turn my head, he disappears. I've also started losing time. I blink and suddenly I'm in a strange location several hours later. I'm not sure if it's short term memory loss or a fugue state. Yesterday I woke up and let me finish it. Yesterday I woke up in the equipment locker, standing in front of the plasma cutters. Several were already missing. The shadow was standing right next to me. I think I know what it wants. So First off, this whole entry is without punctuation entirely. Like
Yeah,
there's no apostrophes, there's no commas, there's no periods. So if it seemed like I was just like rambling, it's because that's how they wrote it. And
weird.
it's
That's
just
like how
like
I write sometimes, not on purpose.
it's to show like the state that they're in, like they're like very frantic. And
Yeah,
so basically what this one is, like I said, it was kind of more of a subtle one. Uh they've entered this fugue state and they just wake up standing in front of the plasma cutters. But
yeah,
someone else has already multiple other people have already gone and taken them.
yeah,
And it's because the shadow figure without its head wants her to cut off her head with some plasma cutters.
yeah. I have a plasma cutter. They're not that great for cutting off heads, even if
Really?
they are metal. Yeah, because you have to be like, there's only so far deep that you can cut with a plasma cutter, unless Destiny has fancy plasma cutters,
I'd
which can like
imagine it would.
literally, yeah, can cut through like feet thick metal.
They're probably pretty good. They're probably like slasher movie hedge clippers.
Oh yeah, that
You
would
know
be
where
some really good plasma cutters.
yeah,
I
it
wish I
can just
had
cut
that.
through anything with a single
Yeah, that would be nice.
or how do they work? When you close them, right?
So yeah, I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the look at the little handheld welders all the guys without safety goggles are using
I don't I
in
what do you
in
mean in
the
the
tower.
tower? Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. OSHA. Somebody call OSHA.
They have a day without accidents board and it's always at 0. Which is actually a real thing in the hangar. If you haven't known, you can go look at this. It's basically when you walk into the hangar, you turn around, and I believe it's on the left wall. It says days without accidents, and it's a live counter of the days, in-game days, that have gone by without a guardian jumping off of the tower.
Yeah,
So
which is
if you
rare to see it above one or
yeah,
two.
I would imagine it would be, yeah. So
But
like
when
if
you
you
jump
ever
off the
go to it,
tower, you can make it go back to 0. If you notice it's at 1, you can go
yeah.
jump off the tower and then it'll go to 0,
Yep.
which is pretty cool.
And that brings us to the final Luna entry, which is Luna 9. And in here, this is probably one of the biggest entries in this whole book. Yelaya is saying that she kind of knows it was a time when many attempted to subvert the laws of life and death, like Clovis Bray, as well as the faction of the Hive. Yelaya raised an eyebrow in Glint's direction. Bray used the tools of the Vex. The Hive blasphemers practiced the magical art of necromancy. Her tone darkened. Both succeeded after a fashion. The early Hive experiments were done in secret under the guidance of a powerful wizard whose name we'll not mention here. Nokris, Glint offered. Yes, well, my Yelaya grimaced. The unmentionable wizard created many abomination using deceased and living subjects, including your unfortunate moon miners. She
Yeah.
steepled her fingers. It's possible that the access to these powerful pumpkins were a boon to his research. Her eerie gaze pierced Glint's mechanical eye. This may explain why the Headless Ones persist to this day, and why flaming visages bear a similarity to your Golden Age relics. Wow, that explains a lot, Glint marveled, but he continued reluctantly. Pumpkins aren't powerful relics, they're just fruit. They are indeed, Yelaya concluded direly, the fruit of the
Fruit
damned.
of the day. Yeah.
The fucking
That'd be a
fruit of the
good
damned.
metal name, like a band name or an album cover.
See, like that's something that like that's like a John entry. Like the fruit of the
Yeah.
damned.
Fruit of the damned. I don't know.
So we kind of got a hint. I feel like this is like our first hint
It
to
is.
what the headless ones really are, and it makes the most sense. But so if you go into the if you go into the Nessus Lost sector, which we're about to read the entries for. If you go into the Nessus Lost sector, it talks about a group of hidden who hid out in that lost sector before it was a lost sector. Fallen came in, killed them all, and cut off their heads. If you go into the Europa Lost sector, Exos had their heads cut off. If you go into the Moon Lost sector, the K1 crew had their heads cut off. And in each one of those locations, Glint says, you can get dialogue where Glint's basically saying, and then they were transformed into Hive, and became the Headless Ones,
Right.
which that's not what
Which
happened.
makes
Come on,
sense
Glint.
if Nocris was playing around and made
Well, I
some.
mean, it doesn't make sense that the bodies became Hive.
Well, I mean, what else would they become if like a
They would
hive
just be
entity?
themselves, would they not?
I don't know.
I
I
just think
guess.
I'm just saying I think it's entirely Nocris resurrecting Hive Knights, and either way.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it can make yeah. Either way, it could be one or the other. But yeah, it would probably make more sense, like you said. Secondly, that he was just making hive head, hive resurrecting hive. But the whole
well,
headless pumpkin thing is insane. Anyway.
and so that brings us to Nessus, which actually has, I think, the final clue to the answer.
Yeah.
The first one, Glint makes their way to Nessus to meet Failsafe, who claims she actually has Headless Ones as neighbors. This whole time, all he had to do was go see her. And she says they're the absolute worst. And then, so that's one of your entries, one of your plot lines. The second one, as I said, is the hidden agents who were on Nessus around the Exodus Black, and they hold up in what is now the Lost Sector next to the Exodus Black. And they were just kind of hoping to hide out in there and not get attacked by the Fallen. And that brings us to entry 3, where this is the third storyline where Glint is talking to Mithrax, trying to see what fallen cultures have like headless pumpkin, etc's. And Mithrax tells Glint that there was a fallen or an Elixni Cliffix who claims to have seen them on Nessus, but Cliffix is an idiot.
Yeah.
Specifically,
Yeah.
Specifically,
Yeah.
Mithrax says, "What is the human word for one with good spirit, but who speaks loudly and without reason?" And Glint said, "An idiot."
Yeah.
So people have to stop teaching fallen rude behavior because they
Yeah.
don't understand.
Mhm.
Like we went through this. When was
Yeah.
that?
And
Last
in trouble
season?
for it. Yeah.
Egg
Yeah.
almost got murdered for this shit. Stop doing it. Probably did get murdered.
Yeah.
Uh, Entry 4. Failsafe claims the Headless Ones have been there for centuries, but they never came to say hello. Failsafe is very lonely. I feel bad.
Right. Well, he's been around for a long
She.
time by himself, so
Her.
he's had a very long life
She.
of being alone. She, he is Glint. Wait, Glint's a he, right?
Glint's male pronoun. Failsafe is female pronoun.
Yeah, I keep saying failsafe. Because failsafe is a split personality. It's actually
Yes.
just an AI that's gone rampant and has two versions of itself. Which one is
Also, yes.
yes?
Uh, Entry 5. Those hidden agents, they are getting killed. That's basically that entry. It's just Mayday extraction needed. Uh,
Yeah,
3 of us have already
isn't it
died.
great?
Yeah, they're not doing good.
Well, good to know that they're so disposable.
Seriously, Ikora, what the fuck?
I know. Dang, dude.
Entry 6, Nessus 6. Ido is translating Cliffix's story for Glint, but Cliffix wants something in return. He wants a sparrow. So Glint got him some rusted out shit sparrow that no one needed anymore.
Of course.
And Cliffix, which is rude, Glint. What the fuck? But Cliffix was happy all the same. In Cliffix's story, though, they actually encountered the Headless One in that same law sector, and they didn't mind Cliffix's existence, but he doesn't think Guardians would get the same treatment.
Yeah. Weird.
Yeah, that is weird. Because if it was a hive, why would they give a shit? Like, why would they be like, Fallen are good with me, but not humans?
Yeah.
Because it almost sounds like it should be, like the Exo, if they became the Headless Ones, that they would have that sentience to not want to fight us. And the same thing
Yeah.
with the humans, and the same thing with the K1 crew. But so that right there already just kind of defeats it.
Yeah.
And so then we get to entry number 7, which I think is a great answer of what the headless ones are. And so net yeah, I almost say Netflix for some reason instead of failsafe,
Yep.
but failsafe and Glint are playing checkers on a holographic checkers board, and Glint was winning, and then failsafe accidentally knocked the board over, the holographic checkerboard.
Yeah. Wow. That
And
jerk.
Glint took that as his cue to leave, and failsafe said, "Great. Next time you come by, I'll reveal their true origins." Uh, but you said you didn't know where they came from, Glint objected. You asked why they never visit me, not the nature of their existence. Those are two different questions, Failsafe said. But come again, the AI continued, and I'll tell you everything you want to know about the Hive Necromancer who ripped the concept of Headless Ones from the human subconscious. So,
Good one.
right there. That's what
Good
it
one.
is. Nokris fucked around. He saw all these human stories of pumpkin headed things, and he's like, I'm gonna do it
Yep.
for whatever fucking reason.
Just to maybe mess with your mind and feed his own worm thing.
I wonder if that's a thing with him. If
I
that
don't
if
know.
that's like part of his worm bargain, if they make individual worm bargains, because I mean that's something that really bothers me about the worm bargain because people like to nitpick, they
Yeah,
cherry
I know
pick,
what you mean.
they like to cherry pick it, where it's like Savathun, your trickery, you feed your worm by tricking people, blah blah blah, tricking. So technically, with that in mind, Savathun never has to kill someone. She can live a peaceful life, never killing anyone. Oryx, your navigation, you just have to keep exploring and keep going to all these new places. Never has to kill anyone.
Yeah.
But they
But
have this
doesn't
system.
well, but
Sorry.
the whole thing that bothers me the most about those worms that they're tied to is very much like how the Ahamkara make bargains with
Mm-hmm.
uh, anybody, and they basically set you up to fail. Like, okay, you want to live forever? This is how you're going to do it in this constant battle and struggle. Or like, you want to fight dragons forever? Oh,
Yeah.
this is how you're going to do it. It's like all these things that we've learned about. Like, oh, you want to get out of being trapped in the middle of the hellmouth? Oh, here's how you're going to do it. You're going to lose your eyes and become part hive. It's like,
Yeah.
what? Thanks, Ahamkara.
Yeah.
And so the worm bargain is very much, it's very similar.
Yeah, but it's just like some people like to really harp on the fact that they say Savathun needs to trick, Oryx needs to explore, Ziva needs to
Yeah.
create war, but at the same time, Oryx can just sit in one place and he has tithe feeding his worm. And that tithe comes from killing things. And it's like,
That's
so
true.
so what's this whole nature bullshit that you are fucking spouting, Like
Yeah, I guess you
it
have a point because also Knockers and Crota were Oryx's sons,
mhm. And
and
Crota was the eater of hope. That was
yeah,
his nature. That was his whole deal, and that's
and Knocker
why.
said, "Screw you, Dad. I'm gonna do my own thing."
Yeah, how does Nokris like? What is his nature? Like rebellion? He just has to
I
constantly
guess.
rebel
Well,
and
it's
get new
yeah,
leaders and rebel against them. Like it doesn't
right.
it doesn't track.
That's a little odd, isn't it? But then Savathun's offspring feeding her,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So
It's
so
so
the hive
weird.
at the top, the pitch was you will feed your worm by enacting your nature, right? By
Yeah.
exploring, by creating war, by tricking people. But then it very quickly just became just by killing. That's fine. Just kill a bunch of things. But
Yeah,
people still to this day, despite that like revelation, still to this day, like to cherry pick and be like, "Oh, Savathun, she
I
has a
know.
trick to
Well,
feed her
and then
worm," and it's like,
and
yeah,
then
she
I guess
can,
more to your point, I mean, this book is full of lies, right?
yeah.
So
I wonder if that was ever the case.
maybe.
Like maybe the worms were very upfront with him. It's like, listen, this is probably gonna backfire on you. You'd be pretty stupid to take this deal. And then Oryx is like, I want it. And then after the fact, he's like, oh my god, I was so stupid.
Yeah.
I can never tell someone the truth. I can never
Yeah.
tell them that they spelled it out for me and I still made the wrong choice.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Pee Wee
Uh,
Herman falls off his bike. I meant to do that.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Uh, but that brings us to entry 8, which is the extraction crew. My God, words are not
Yeah.
working today. The extraction crew making it to Nessus. They've arrived way too late. They find the bodies, but
Yeah.
not the heads. And that's what basically tipped this over into Glint's transferred records. And it all comes to an end with entry Nessus 9, where Glint comes back to Eva, and Glint returns to Eva. The Tales of the Forgotten Book is being filled with the tales of the Exo, Hidden, and K1 crew who lost their minds, their lives, and their heads to the Headless Ones. So basically, he's just running around gathering all these stories, all these folklore things, and he's just putting them in the book for people to find.
Yeah.
Really, really
But
getting into the holiday spirit.
yeah, so that's great, and it's fun, and like, um, but while they had fun giving this content to us, and people are digesting this whole how does a headless one, how do we how do we reconcile the fact that there are headless people in
Mm-hmm.
this activity and make it a real life lore thing at the same time, and not just a mechanical construct of a video game you're playing. What's great is that they give you not only a reason for that, but they tie it to backstory that was so rich with lore and little bitty holes that we still haven't had defined, and they give us a little bit of a little nugget, a little bit more flavor on top of that steak, if
Mm-hmm.
you will. Um, and so to tie this all up in a nice, pretty bow, what do you think the significance is of all three sites, planets, whatever?
I don't think
Be
there's much significance personally. I think they were just three convenient locations to tell a story, and
You don't think there's even like maybe a little bit more to it or anything? Because I mean, like I legitimately have no clue. Like I'm curious.
So I think Europa and K1 are two really good examples of like easy locations to like
Uh-huh.
find this story in, right?
Okay.
To have the XO be mutilated, to have the K1 crew come up again. Because the K1 crew is full on horror story right off the bat.
Yeah, it is. It's great. I would love that as a movie.
Yeah. And so, you already have that would be actually like maybe not a movie, maybe like a limited series where it follows
Yeah.
a person to their personal like horror, and you have like Wade Rowe, and it like ends with that scene where they like see the plasma cutters and they're like gonna their head
Dude, that'd be
off.
cool. Yeah.
Either way. So I think those are like very easy things when because you have to like think about it. Not everything's going to have a super deep meaning. Some things are just
Right.
convenient, right? So
Exactly.
they sit down and they say, we want to tell this story about like Sleepy Hollow, Headless Ones, and like keep it like horror, keep it scary. Where can we put these things? We want to have a few locations. We want to have 3 locations. So K1, super easy to pick. That's like, of
Yeah.
course, why would you not go there? And then Exo, another good one because there's convenience in the body horror. And then it's like the other option is like, okay, so do we want to? We have our human, we have our Exo. We can do one in the Dreaming City.
Yeah.
You could do that. So you have your awoken check box, or like what else is there to say? Who else do we want to have in this conversation who hasn't been featured a lot recently? Because that's what they said recently. Where were they talking? There was like an interview somewhere where they were talking about for example, Season of the Lost was gonna like had to have Savathun, had to have Mara, and if it has Savathun and it has Mara, it has to have uh Crow,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
because
yeah. I
it
saw this
has,
article.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it has Osiris, so it has to have Saint 14, and then it's like it'd be really cool if we could have Eris, but we can't
but
have Eris
yeah,
because there's already so
because it's
many people.
too much, too
Yeah.
much. Yeah,
So here's a
you got to focus the narrative story on, certain characters.
yeah,
Otherwise, it just turns to mud. It's like putting too many crayons together and trying to come up with a new color. They just end up making brown.
yeah,
And so at one point, you got to be like, okay, that's one too many colors.
yeah. And so this was like a convenient way of being like, okay, but what are the other characters that we wanted to have in this? And it's like, well, we want to have fun with cryptarchs that we can't have in the main game. We really wanted to have Eris have something go on. So we put one on the moon. We have Eris be featured. And we have not talked to Failsafe in 3 years. Maybe we should look at her again since she's the only person to survive the Beyond Light darkness
That's
ship
true.
invasion. Like,
Wow.
everyone else is gone except for her. Maybe we should
Yeah.
focus on her a little bit more. And Devram. Devram also survived.
Yeah. Wow.
I
Well,
got a
and I
freaking
and I hope going forward. I mean, I love the fact that they put knockers in there, and I love the fact that they're kind of playing with us and what a lot of us already kind of think is what happened with Savathun being, because we know that she has her own guardians. We know that she has her own ghosts that's coming
Mhm.
up, right? And so this is a nice little seed to plant to play with us to say, oh, Savathun could have learned necromancy, because it's in the lore where she explicitly says, "Oh, I
Mhm.
underestimated what you were doing, and maybe
Yeah.
there's more to it." And she's like, like, so that gives you the implication that, oh, she's like, "Oh, well, I'm gonna use this
Yeah. And
newfound."
this all does kind of put that thought in the back of your head, right?
Yeah,
When
yeah,
Witch Queen comes and we're looking for how did Savathun get the light? How did she get these ghosts, etc. And then it's like, oh, she had necromancy, and it's like, oh yeah, they kind of said they like reminded us of that necromancy story beat
yeah.
with Festival of the Lost.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah. So that was the scary lures to tell in the dark, even though they weren't that scary. Some of them were. It was a little more scattered. I would love because I know, and I feel like we keep talking about this, but I know like Bungie, it seems like they really want to branch out into like other medias and stuff. And
Yeah,
like Seth is like an actual author. He wrote the Trader Baru
yep,
Cormorant
in there,
series,
yep, yep,
and I'd love to see them like hand off writers like, here, write like a short story collection, or write like, whatever the case may be, and they can like release like a horror story, just like really
be
dive into
great.
some spooky thing, and this like sell it in October, and it's like, that'd be awesome for it
Yeah,
to see happen. But next episode will be on November 7th,
perfect.
and we'll be talking about something.
We don't know what that is yet, but there
Yeah.
might be something else that gets planted. I think November is going to be the dry month of
Yeah,
the
November
season.
will be the dry month, so we'll have to come up with something, because then we'll have
Yeah,
November 7th and November 21st, and then December 5th,
yeah.
because when does the 30th anniversary kick off? Is that the 14th?
December, I think. Yeah, the 14th.
I think it's the 14th or the 21st. It's like the end of December, mid to end December. So we'll have that kind of like period there to try to
Yeah,
hopefully there's new lore with that, hopefully there's new something with that. It's going to be really exciting because there's a 6 player activity and a dungeon that have to do with the 9 again, and the last time we had a dungeon that had to do with the 9 was prophecy,
yeah.
so this will be cool to see, whatever
Can't
it
wait.
is. Yeah, this extended break is going to be we have to double check what books we haven't covered. Maybe we can go back to some of the ones from this year. But yeah, follow us on at Loose Cannon Show on Twitter. We don't tweet a lot. We only tweet like updates. So set us the notifications, and you'll get a little notification of any updates to the show when we're going live. It's basically just the like the Friday before, and then the day of. Boom, boom. We're going show. We're going live. You get us 4 times a month. Set us the
Yeah,
notifications so you can always tune in live. And if you came in late, you want to see the rest of it, this will be uploaded to YouTube, to Anchor, which will post it out podcast form everywhere. Later today, later tomorrow, depending on when that's fully updated and stuff. Sometimes it takes longer. Uh, Anything to say?
No. Happy
All right.
Halloween.
Yeah. Happy Halloween, everybody. Make sure. Nah, I don't want to grab it. I got my costume behind me. Uh,
Uh,
I had something to say. I forgot what it was though. Either way, bye everybody.
bye.